the other person would go in and hide. So I left Ryan out at the dumpster and I went inside, and I'm very competitive. So I said, now where can I hide? And I looked over and I saw this huge oven. We had this huge oven that we used to cook all the muffins and brownies, and it stayed on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I thought to myself, I could fit in that oven. But I was like, well, what if I get too hot? And I figured, well, I'll just crawl out, or I'd say, Ryan, I'm in the oven, let me out. So it all made perfect sense to me. So I went over to this huge oven and I opened up the door and I crawled up inside and I used my sleeves to pull the oven shut, and it went click. And I said, oh my goodness. So I took my sleeve and I was trying to get it open and I couldn't open the door. And so I was sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden I heard knock, knock, knock. And he said, you locked me out. And I realized that when I had come in, I had just by force of habit locked the back door. And so I was like, oh my goodness. I said, I'm in the oven. And he said, get out. And I said, I can't. And so I was sitting there thinking, I said, okay, it's 2 o'clock now. The manager will be here at 6 o'clock. And I thought, okay, I'll be cooked by then. What am I going to do? And so I took off my shoelaces and I was trying to get them through the latch and trying to open the door, and I couldn't. And then I remembered how the week before, when we were playing freeze tag, I had actually crawled through the drive-through window, but Ryan was too big and he couldn't get through it. But I knew that was my only chance, and so I said, crawl through the drive-through. And he yelled, I'll get stuck. And I yelled, I'm burning up. So all of a sudden, it got silent. And I knew that Ryan must be trying to get through the drive-through window. And I looked down at the bottom of my tennis shoes, and they were starting to melt. And it looked like I had stepped in wads of gum because my tennis shoes were starting to stretch from the bottom of the oven floor. And all of a sudden I heard, I'm stuck. Ryan was stuck trying to get through the drive-through window with 2 legs hanging out because he couldn't get through his midsection through the drive-through. And all of a sudden, this car comes through the drive-through. And Ryan said these customers said, son, do you need some help? And Ryan said he told them, my friend's cooking in the oven. So anyway, just adventures. That's what my whole life has been about, one adventure after another. And when I graduated from college, I did not want to teach. I really didn't even want to work. I just wanted to have more adventures, and so I moved to London, England. And while I was there, I was a singing and dancing waiter at this restaurant called the Texas Embassy Cantina. And I had to wear this cowboy hat and chaps and spurs, and I had to walk up to every table and talk in a Texas accent, and the customers would always say, oh, you do such a good American accent. And I would say, no, I'm really from America. They'd say, oh, and you play the part so well. And I would say, no, I am really American. So I got really tired of that. And so I finally got a backpack, and I backpacked to Romania. And I was staying with some gypsies because I was looking for the grave of Vlad Dracul. And he was an evil emperor in Romania who started the whole Dracula story. And so I wanted to find his grave. And that night at 12 o'clock, the gypsies took me to his grave. But before we went, they had fed me some food, and it looked like a link of sausage on a stick. And so I ate it, and I didn't know what it was. And when I was done, I asked, was that pig or hog? What was that? And they told me it was actually rat. I had eaten a rat on a stick. And so anyway, that night at 12 o'clock, when we got to the grave, there was a big 6-foot stone crow at the head of the grave, and I was standing there with the gypsies, and all of a sudden I had a pain in my stomach. And I was like, oh. I was like, what is that? And I was like, oh. All of a sudden I started hollering. I was like, oh. And the gypsies thought I was being possessed by Vlad Dracul, and they took off running. But really, I just had food poisoning, and it was so bad, I eventually had to be flown home, and I had food poisoning so bad there was bruises on the inside and outside of my stomach. My appendix was inflamed. I had partial paralysis of my left lung, and I was in bad shape. And I was in the hospital, and I was talking to my mother, and she said, Ron, listen to me. Your father and I, we are so tired of all these adventures you're having. Will you please consider staying here for a while? And you see, I'm from a population 600 town, and my mama sitting there telling me she wanted me to stay was killing me. But she said to me, listen to me, Ron. At the local school, Snowden Elementary School, one of their 5th grade teachers passed away, and the students are devastated, the community is devastated. Will you please consider going to that school and filling in for the rest of the year, because those kids really need a teacher? And I thought about it.